And it couldn't have been written any more precisely. It's not like, oh, gee, we wish it were written better. It's written beautifully. So just listen. Here's what it says. This is what they're arguing. Whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens, okay, the entry of any aliens, or of any class of aliens, so any aliens, any class of aliens, into the United States. So the entry of people into the United States. Let's say, just to be precise, of aliens into the United States. So any time, whenever the president finds that the entry of any alien or any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, right? So if I find as president that a person or a group of people will be detrimental to the interests of the United States, and certainly there's lots of examples.
Do you ever wonder what might lie out there deep in space? Do you want to believe we're not alone, that somewhere in the universe, intelligent life may actually exist?
Our next guest says there is life out there. It does exist. Dr. Charles Hall says he spent 2 years working with extraterrestrial beings during his time with the American military. He claims the US military has actually been in contact with alien species for years. And Dr. Charles Hall is here to explain, along with his wife Marie, live from what Bugs Bunny used to call Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, thank you both for your time. Terrific to have you with us. Firstly, Charles, can you tell us your story of how you managed to come into contact with these beings as you worked with the military?
I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I enlisted in the Air Force in July 1964, and I was trained as a weather observer. And I was sent to Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada, outside Las Vegas, Nevada. And for 2.5 years, I was sent up to the gunnery ranges up at Indian Springs, and I was given a clearance to allow me to go anywhere in Dreamland, as long as I was alone. I discovered that up there at the north end of Indian Springs Valley, which you can see on the map, in the state of Nevada here in America, that there was a base which the U.S. Air Force maintained for a group of extraterrestrials who were tall and white. And I, as the duty weather observer, was allowed to go up there, or they were allowed to come down to where I was. And the interaction took place over more than 2 years.
Wow.
During those 2 years, I also came across, I also interacted to a lesser extent with the Roswell Greys, and I've also personally talked with the extraterrestrials that I call the Norwegians with 24 teeth, who come here from a very nearby star, perhaps Bernard star. And my experiences, my presentations, my books are unique because I'm the only person that I know of that was allowed to interact with the extraterrestrials, the tall whites, for more than 2 years.
So 3 different species of aliens you're talking about there, Charles.
Yeah, can you describe what they look like, what they were like?
Well, I'll start with the tall whites. They're thinner than we are, and they're very frail. Throughout most of their life, they are the same height as I am, 5'11", and they live 10 times longer than humans. They live 600 or 800 years.
Wow.
But they don't age the way we do. When they get to be equivalent to a human of about 40 years, that means when they're about 400 years, they start growing again instead of aging as humans.
Right.
And then they go, and this continues, and so that by the time they get to be 600 or 800 years old, they're very tall, 8.5, 9, or 10 feet tall. But this is not necessarily good because their skeleton grows more than their internal organs. And so there comes a time after 600 or 800 years when their skeleton, their body is tall, but their organs can't support it,
the
at
organism.
which time they die a natural death, because they're just flesh and blood creatures like we are. If they injure themselves, it takes them 10 times longer to heal up than a human.
Yeah.
So there's a trade-off.
Yeah, right. They still look fresh as a daisy when they go, though. They look like Tilda Swinton. Hey, just quickly, you had them there. You were working with the aliens on any particular project, or was the military working with the aliens on a particular project? Was there, I don't know, technology sharing or, you know, botanical cross-fertilisation?
The U.S. Air Force, and I'm speaking of the mid-1960s, was willing to give them anything they asked for. When I first met them, I was very afraid of them, and every human I met when you come across them out in the desert was naturally very afraid of them, and they were even more afraid of us. It's like running into a gorilla in the wild where the gorilla is on his home ground. So they had to go through a process of becoming used to being around humans before they could take part in the technology transfer program. I, as the weather observer, was the test human. As an enlisted man, I was expendable, you know.
Sure.
I was the one they send out to and say, practice talking to Charlie. And
Marie, let's bring you in. You've never seen these things for yourself. Are you a believer? Because probably a lot of people watching this morning are going to think, I don't believe him. It's ridiculous. How could it be possible?
Well, Charles was very intelligent in that he waited until we'd been married a couple of months before he told me about the extraterrestrials coming into his barracks at night. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, I really don't care. I have never given any thought as to whether they exist or not, and I really don't care. I've known Charles. We've been married over 43 years. He may be a character, but I am his character reference, and I totally believe that this is real. Furthermore, we have had confirmations from people all over the world. We have never had any serious tire kickers, you know, people who say, well...
Well, certainly there seems to be a lot of people, around the world who would support your view on this, who seem to have had their own experiences, but probably not quite as intimately as you.
And now some fresh pickings from the political grapevine. Our top story today was Iran taunting the U.S. over the sanctions negotiations. Now an Iranian news agency is making some other accusations about the U.S., and they're interesting. The Washington Post writes Fars, which describes itself as Iran's leading independent news agency, claims documents leaked by Edward Snowden provide, quote, incontrovertible proof that an alien or extraterrestrial intelligence agenda is driving U.S. domestic and international policy. One Washington Post blogger wrote that while the story is entertaining and filled with bizarre conspiracy theories, quote, this is a reminder of how some hardliners see the world.
Знаете абсолютно все. Ну вот, например, прилетали на Землю инопланетяне. Вот те самые зеленые человечки.
Марьяна, значит, рассказываю вам первый и последний раз. Вместе с передачей чемодана с ядерными кодами президенту страны приносят специальную папку. На ней написано «Совершенно секретно». И она целиком и полностью посвящена пришельцам, которые посетили нашу планету. Одновременно предоставляется доклад от абсолютно закрытой спецслужбы, которая занимается контролем пришельцев на территории нашей страны. Значит, две эти папки передаются вместе с ядерным чемоданом. После прекращения полномочий, соответственно, эти папки передаются новому президенту. Более подробную информацию на эту тему вы можете получить, посмотрев известный хроникально-документальный фильм «Люди в черном». Вышло несколько версий.
Сколько их среди нас?
Сколько их среди нас, рассказывать не буду, потому что это может вызвать панику.
With his beloved terrier in his lap in his comfortable Lake Worth home, he could be a retired insurance salesman. But take a look at Edgar Mitchell's wall, his photo gallery, that picture taken on the moon, February the 6th, 1971.
What more can an explorer want than to be where humans have never been and to observe, gather your data, go back and tell the people.
Ed Mitchell can captivate you talking about his 9-hour and 17-minute moonwalk. It was a record. But there's something else he'd like you to know.
I don't know how many or where or how they're doing it, but they've been observing us and here for quite some time, and we see these craft all the time.
Ed Mitchell is a straight talker and a true believer that we are not alone.
I believe what I'm saying, and I cite the evidence that I know.
He says that the government he served in the military and as an astronaut is perpetuating cover-ups of alien sightings, going all the way back to the legendary 1947 Roswell incident, an alleged alien spacecraft crash where remains were allegedly recovered.
The reason for the denial was, number one, they didn't know if these were hostile and could we protect ourselves from them. Didn't want the Soviets to know, so they devised to lie about it and cover it up.
Mitchell is unbothered by critics who think the guy with the right stuff has taken a wrong turn. He has no doubt there are alien craft observing Earth right now, and many more out there looking for us.
From what Bugs Bunny used to call Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, thank you both for your time. Terrific to have you with us. Firstly, Charles, can you tell us your story of how you managed...
We're not alone, that somewhere in the universe, intelligent life may actually exist.
Our next guest says there is life out there. It does exist. Dr. Charles Halls says he spent 2 years working with extraterrestrial...
A while back, I met a young man named Seamus. The love of my life. He was a good-looking kid, 6'2", 6'3", clear-eyed with an easy smile. This young man was all that any of us might ever hope for in a fellow, at least most of the time. There have been some bumps along the way, and he hasn't always agreed with it. And we lived in a small house. We had a mango tree out front while flying kites and running along the paddy fields and catching dragonflies. And I want to tell you, on Saturday morning, he loved beyond measure, even longer and harder than ever before. So was I. It is the largest ever, I promise you. This I know. And he endured the lash of the whip 3 times. Cold action. Now, we will not apologize for our way of life and do our business in the light of day, because that is who we are, that is what we've done, and that is what we will do. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, please. Have a seat. Now, we can't forget the issue of immigration. Mexico. And you've been told over and over and over again, not allowed to enter this country, just kick the can down the road. Go back without delay. Government has a threshold responsibility to round up and deport 11 million people. Families crossed rivers in the dead of night, traveled miles by foot. Tough. Take root beyond our borders. No, you don't either. We will not allow it. It's just not an option. It's not going to happen as long as I'm president. Promise you. I promise you. And learn English. Forbidden from visiting the United States, which means deported. We have fully sealed our borders. Brick by brick. Calloused hand by calloused hand. We built it. It is the highest, strongest the world has ever known. Right thing to do. And America will have less pollution, more jobs for construction workers who need them, who remain are scrambling knowing that they can't escape the reach of the United States of America. And as long as I'm president, I intend to keep it that way. That's why my administration has put more boots on the border than ever before. So with the rest of my time today, I'd like to talk about why the story I just told. Aliens are real. They are serious, and they are many. They exist. Anyone who tells you otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. And they have something to tell us. Bagian dari diri saya. Rusliwa Somantri Benika Tunggal Ika.
They say hello. We feel very much at home.
In search of a new... There's something happening. It's just gas. I promise you. And I believe America is on the way up. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
A crisis of leadership. We've been talking about this all week. But what if there was some sort of outer space crisis? An alien invasion sounds crazy, perhaps, but then who thought we'd ever see the stock market swing 5% a day all week long? So maybe it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. If aliens invaded, who would step up to lead us in that fight, and could we even win? That's just one of the questions the Discovery Channel's new series, Curiosity, looks at. Joining me now is physics professor Michio Kaku, who is a consultant for the series. Professor, welcome. The biggest question before we get any invasion is, do aliens even exist, and how would we know?
Well, the Kepler satellite currently orbiting in outer space has identified about 50 planets that seem very much Earth-like. In fact, every week we discover another Jupiter-sized planet in outer space. Now, to be sure, most of them probably have no more than microbial life, just germs. But a few of them may have intelligent life, perhaps even more advanced than what we have on Earth.
Now, so how does this actually work? When Discovery decided they were going to do a show on alien invasions, your phone rings because you're on the sort of speed dial for theoretical physicists who can help them do the war game for how this might play out?
Well, believe it or not, we physicists have actually studied the question of what happens if we do encounter a hostile advanced civilization in space. And Hollywood gets it all wrong. Hollywood assumes that the aliens are maybe 100 years more advanced than us, and if only we had a secret weapon, we can defeat the aliens. Wrong. Either the aliens don't bother with us because we're simply too primitive, or if they do invade, it'll be more like Bambi versus Godzilla.
And why do you say that? What techniques will they have that we can't even imagine?
Think of the fact that they could be 1,000, 1,000,000 years more advanced than us. Realize that the universe is 13.7 billion years old, and so it's conceivable that they can have weapons that we can't even conceive of. Now, in my own point of view, look at how the barbarians eventually defeated the Romans. The barbarians didn't have a secret of weapons by which they defeated Caesar and the Romans. No, they learned technology from the Romans. They imported technology. They learned the technology of the Romans and then used it against the Roman Empire. That's how they won.
So then how would we, I know it sounds implausible, but if something like this were to happen, how would we defend ourselves as a planet?
Well, initially, we would have to probe them to find out exactly how advanced they are. Do they have nuclear weapons? Do they have radio and radar communications technology? Or do they have a whole new generation of weapons that we can't even conceive of? Now, remember that for the most part, alien civilizations in outer space are not going to come to plunder us because there are plenty of uninhabited planets out there with resources. So for the most part, they're going to leave us alone. However, if, on the other hand, one day they do attack, we have to be prepared for the fact that they're going to overwhelm us in the opening shots of a war.
Well, so what do we do?
Well, first we have to study the question. We have to send up more Kepler satellites. We have to eavesdrop on conversations in outer space between alien civilizations. This is something that we haven't even done yet. We have yet to find a single advanced civilization or life in outer space. But sooner or later, we will. The first step is to monitor them, to understand what level of civilization they have, the kinds of weapons. Second, perhaps even begin to initiate a dialogue. Now, of course, that's dangerous if they are warlike, in which case we may want to sit back and simply analyze their weaponry.
Now, why do we assume that they're going to be hostile? Isn't there a chance that any aliens we encounter could come to us more like E.T. and less like Predator?
Yeah, personally, I think for the most part, alien civilizations that are 1 million years ahead of us have had 1 million years to sort out racial, sectarian, and religious differences among themselves. So I think for the most part, they're going to be peaceful. And for the most part, they're going to find resources on uninhabited planets. Why bother with the Earth with restive natives when you have all these other planets loaded with natural resources and nobody lives on them? However, we do have to plan for the day that maybe a few of them could be hostile.
Now, I'm wondering if there can't be an upside to all this. I'm a big fan of the original Star Trek series, and it was only when, there were alien civilizations that seemed to challenge the Earth that you found that the Earth got its act together for the kind of global governance that all the visionaries say we need that if we're going to deal with climate change, if we're going to deal with all the modern issues, global finance, where the sovereignty of individual nations is actually a political barrier to solving these big problems. So can there be an upside to the alien threat?
Believe it or not, when President Ronald Reagan met Mikhail Gorbachev, we now know during the transcripts of the meeting that he said that if we were ever attacked by the Martians, you and me, the Soviets and the capitalist U.S., would be allies in the fight against the Martians. Well, that's how Ronald Reagan looked at it, and believe it or not, there's some truth to it. If we are faced with a common enemy in outer space, it would indeed help to unite the Earth, just the way Ronald Reagan said.
All right, Michio Kaku, theoretical physicist and an advisor to the new Discovery series Curiosity. We'll be looking forward to seeing how Discovery treats that, and thanks for taking the time today.
Right, every Sunday at 8 o'clock.
Every Sunday at 8 o'clock. A theoretical physicist who knows how to get in his promo. I like that. Chuck Todd, live from Iowa with the latest on the AIM straw poll ahead. That's next.